How's it going, y'all? Robot here. I'm starting a series where I review the current season of different ARPGs, let you know whether I liked it or didn't like it. It's kind of similar to my previous things where I reviewed different seasons, and I'm going to add that function into future seasons of different games, let you know if you should jump into the season or not. I view myself as a casual player, but obviously below the sweaties and the streamers. Yeah, so excuse my voice, I just listened to myself on playback, and man, I sound congested. I am fighting a cold and I want to get this out before, I work on something else. So, there are things about a game that I might like that is different from y'all, and I always want to try to be open to that, and I'll make sure that's in a specific section where I talk about my opinions. Gameplay will always be shown, as you see now, and I'll try to have gameplay later in the game so you get more of the real experience of what you'll experience later, because I feel like so many of these games, the early games, is not indicative of how it will feel later. So, I'm not going to lie, I bought Titan Quest 2 a while ago, back when the hype was around, and I've been distracted by extremely strong seasons of my main three, but with a low between the seasons, I needed something I could pick up, and TLDR, I had a decent time, but there are some huge caveats. So after 2 decades, the Diablo killer from 2006 is finally back. Sort of. There's a different developer, as the original was developed by Iron Lore Entertainment, which has gone under. The new one is being developed by Grimlore Games, so not the same, but it still feels pretty close. If you're an avid ARPG gamer like myself and you're in the community, any new ARPG is a reason for hype because it feels like the space and the current titles are limiting with a few dominant players, mainly being PoE 1 and 2 and Diablo and all its variants. Of course, my personal favorite is Last Epoch, but compared to the other two, it's kind of, I wouldn't say on its last legs, but I have so many mixed feelings about that game. I love it, but I do worry about their release schedule and how that's going to allow them to keep up with the other two before they get forgotten. So Titan Quest 2 has been out now for early access for about 6 months, and it's carving out a very specific niche, the comfy ARPG, and there's a lot to like to it. And the skinny is, if you like D2, you will probably like this game as it feels very similar. It's not nearly as quick or technical as D4 or PoE, and it doesn't want to be that. It feels like you're gaming again in the 90s or the aughts, but with some refreshing modern advancements. So let's see if it's worth your drachma right now, or should you leave this myth on the shelf? Let's break down the good, the bad, and the lot of in progress, and some of my opinions. The good. Dual mastery system is back. This is what people really liked about the original. And it's really the crown jewel of the game. You don't just pick Barbarian, you'll pick Warfare, and then later add Earth to become a Battle Mage. The skill modifiers are real MVP here. Instead of just adding 10% damage, you can fundamentally change how a skill works. Think of different nodes in Diablo, very similar to that, where you have a few different options, more than Diablo, ironically. Diablo 4 I'm talking about. So instead of just having your ice shards, you can make them orbit and deadly halo like you see, or you can make them homing, you can make them have a ton of pierce. There's a lot of different things you can do with each individual skill. And for this part, I think it does this very well. There's a lot of different customizations you can do with the skills, and it's really solid. It's a very good skill and passive system. Not bad, not amazing. I won't lie, it was a little wonky for me to figure out everything at the start. It's not really a negative, but there was zero hand-holding. I tend to play games going in unknown. I did peek into the meta builds to kind of give me a direction of what I want to do, which I still ended up not really doing. But after the first 10 levels, I understood the systems very well and started crafting my build, which you see on screen. And I will say I could have used more hand-holding because there's one part which I didn't realize the core abilities could be leveled up to an embarrassing amount of levels that I won't disclose. Along with the splitting skill points, I kind of got it later, but I wish I did it a little bit earlier. Also, that it's pretty permanent. I did read there's a respect way. I couldn't find that after 20 hours in, and I got to a point where we'll talk about later. But more good. A world of color. Let's be real, most ARPGs are like the 50 Shades of Grey and Gore. Diablo really kind of struggling with this. Though the new expansion, ironically, looks just like Titan Quest 2. Very spacious and beautiful, lots of cliffs and ups and downs. So, cool. I don't know how I feel about that yet, because I kind of like the grim and dirty for the Diablo series. It's like a comfort thing to me. Anyways, Titan Quest 2 is gorgeous in its environments, but it does feel a little bit dated to a degree. It doesn't really look as clean as I would say PoE 2 does, with a very similar style of visuals. I think it's just the lack of like things around, and I think the camera zoom just being so out, it makes it look like you're looking like at Lego pieces. I mean, it's pretty, and people like that. Just for me, something they could have dialed in. And I would say that the visuals actually look better than Last Epoch, where I like Last Epoch, but it looks a little cartoonish, where at least this looks more real. Again, almost because of the your view from the isometric, little like looking at Lego pieces to a degree. But anyways, he uses Unreal 5, and I think effectively does this. Ancient Greece, it comes to life. There's lush greenery. The water effects are pretty solid. And honestly, it's good. I think it's nice to be in a different area. It felt like a vacation from the traditional, really muddy, dirty, bloody places that we're used to playing, absent the ice levels that always exist. And then occasionally you'll beat up some items or creatures from Greek mythology and crabs. A lot of crabs. We'll get to that. It also feels really nice how the game does side quests. This is something I think really stood out for my playthrough. Absolutely love hunting each and every side quest, and it's something that even like Diablo 4, and which actually Diablo 4 did terrible, but PoE 2 kind of struggled this as well, where it's like, yeah, there were some side quests, but you didn't discover them like naturally. In Titan Quest 2, you just stumble onto things, and also there's people in town like, hey, go check this out. And if you're just play along the story, you only have to veer off ever so slightly to take care of these side quests, and then you'll probably discover some new ones along the way, giving you plenty of things to do while you're leveling characters. Really good distractions just from the, running around and killing things. So getting to the next thing, we're talking about tactical combat. Unlike the screen clearing zoom of PoE 1 and Diablo 3, Titan Quest 2, and well, really Diablo 4 now, Titan Quest 2 is a more deliberate, similar to the vein of PoE 2, but much less polished. Developers did a great job telegraphing moves, which somehow Diablo still hasn't figured out. It's like 30 fucking years at this point. I found myself having to take out certain enemies first, or taking care of the trash before working elite. It was good to have a change of pacing in the gameplay. It's something I really enjoyed. The game makes you work for destroying packs, and when it works really well. It's something that other games try to do, but really lack the ability. I would say it reminded me a little bit of No Rest of the Wicked, which I really liked. I'm not going to review that one because I think there's still a lot more to go in that game, and any early impressions will ruin the scope of what that game's going to be, where I don't feel like that with this game. Anyways, you have to dodge wind-up attacks and use the environment to kind of get around things, which I found myself naturally doing while I was playing. It is slower for sure, but every hit feels like it has pretty good weight to it. And honestly, the boss battles were fairly solid. They did get a little repetitive towards the end, but yeah. Will you pick up patterns? Yes, I think that is fine. There is a bit of a learning curve to the combat. I definitely struggled earlier, and then once I kind of figured things out, I figured it out pretty well. I do think that makes it rewarding as you start to master, though the caveat is what we're going to get into now. The bad. Plenty of bad. Not terrible, but a lot of opinions. But let's talk with the actual factual bad that every player is going to agree with before we get into my opinions. The first big one is the Attack of the Crabs. One of the biggest complaints from the early acts is enemy variety. You spend a lot of time fighting crabs, birds, and snakes, literally on repeat. For a game based on Greek mythology, we want manticores and hydras, not just oversized seafood platter, and then lots of birds and snakes. The game gets a little bit better as you progress, but definitely feels like the problem consists. It never really goes away. Huge complaint from the release from Chapter 2 was, again, enemy variety, and it still feels like an issue in Chapter 3. I feel like this could have been fixed with like reskins or recoloring of enemy types. So at least they look a little bit different, maybe give them some different attacks, like instead of just regular birds, give you some lightning birds or some fire birds. I feel like there's something you could have done that just wasn't done. You just get regular ass birds each time. Going on to the next part is there are certain areas where there's one faction that you'll stumble on, and then you're just fighting all of that one faction. And it's kind of, again, gets a little tedious. This could have been done better. Having more combat variety amongst the packs. where there seemed to be only like 2 or 3 main types of packs you'd run into, which, hey, you have really good gameplay and battle mechanics, but the problem is you don't have a ton of them. So when you're fighting that one faction over and over and over again, the patterns become a little bit too much. The game also falls into a big issue, which I have with most ARPGs, where common and magic items basically become useless as you progress. There is a crafting element I read about, but I've yet to run across it. Meaning a good portion of the demo, I've been skipping over a large base of items just because it turns to clutter. And I had so many gold towards the end, I didn't really need to even sell them anymore. So going into the next issue is content scarcity. So this really discussed with like the current, if you plan on waiting or, this won't be an issue. But as of February 2026, we just received Chapter 3, the Arcadian Plains. And while the quality is high, the total playtime per chapter for me was around 10 hours. And this is literally doing everything, reading my skills a bunch, spending so much time in town. I'm one of those people who will read and research everything as I'm going through it. Definitely runs up my playtime. I know you blasters out there, and if you might ignore side quests, you could easily cut through this in half the amount of time, meaning you get through all 3 chapters in like 15 hours, and that's worth whatever, like $20-$30 it is right now. I would say no, but, caveats, right? And also, if you're looking for an endless endgame type or mission, like an Atlas in PoE, or even dungeons in Diablo 4, which kind of suck, it's not there. And according to developers, it's never going to be there. It's not the plan. Again, this is expected to play more like Diablo 2, where you play the game for the campaign, which is good. Campaign is really good. I enjoyed it. I think it's pretty. The story's good, but they want you to keep playing that campaign over and over again. That's the plan. I'm guessing loot will carry over so you can collect things and use it on a new character, yada, yada, yada. But again, without seasons or a ladder or something to make it worth it, I don't know if me personally would enjoy that. But again, just caveats, and we're not getting into my opinions yet. So as of right now, there's only 3 chapters with no endgame after that. So that's all you get. 30 hours tops. Now, I am a mythology nerd, so seeing all the Greek gods, knowing their stories and how they incorporated them, which they did really, really well, I enjoyed that, and it really helped carry me through the playthrough, because, like, hey, man, I know some of these characters. I'm like, avoiding spoilers here, but like, hey, I like that character. They actually did their story. That's really cool. And it's also something they did in Titan Quest 1 and did a pretty good job with, so it's good to see that carry over. The last big issue I have is the sluggish start. Movement speed and basic attack animations can feel really floaty and just like you're not doing anything, you're super slow. You can kind of boost your movement speed as you're going through, but even towards the end, it just didn't feel good. Going back, I probably would have picked up a movement ability, which in retrospect, I didn't do, but I don't know how much that would have helped, because there is a real issue that in between packs, while you're walking around, the game feels so slow. And since the maps are really, really large, it feels even slower. And while the game usually gives you paths back if you have to loop through something, it still feels tedious when you're like going a little side path, trying to find a little puzzle, trying to figure that out, and then you have to go back to start. There's so much time I just teleport back to a waypoint instead of like having to go through it again. Not a deal breaker for me, but definitely annoyance that I could see easily be fixed with a higher speed from start. Okay, let's get to some of the ugly things. There's a lot of performance stutters that I read about for high-end rigs, particularly on AMD GPUs. They're patching that. They added FSR 3.1 anti-lag. Optimizations are still in work. I didn't have too much. I did have to play with my DLS a little bit. I'm running a 10900K and a 3080, 1440, and it was pretty solid. There were points, there were stutters I had to play with the DLSS, but it wasn't terrible. Other things is early access wonkiness. Expect bugs. There was a lot of issues reported about loot not equipping correctly, multiplayer lag. Some skill tooltips look like they're written in actual ancient Greek. Personally, what I ran into the most is just being frozen on ladders, which is really annoying. Like, you'd go down a ladder and then you could be stuck and you couldn't go anywhere. Couldn't use your little dodge or whatever. and you had to go back up and back down the ladder again, which is just really annoying. I also seen a bunch of text stutters where you had to like click the chat a couple times to actually get it moving. But other than that, it was pretty smooth for me on the actual gameplay. All right, let's get into my opinions, because there's quite a bit here. And again, reiterating, these are my personal opinions. This might not apply to you. But when I wrote the script a bit back and sat on it, I wanted some time to digest, and I took some time and went back and actually played a little bit more. And then I stopped very shortly after because I didn't feel a need to play any further past level 30, 35, because my build kind of hit a brick wall. Like, not in a bad thing. I was still killing things, no problem. But my abilities were all already put together. I already had the pairings I want. I already had the passes I really needed. And there weren't any further ways to progress them. I didn't see any big jumps. And let me explain. Going back to split mastery system, I picked Storm and Earth. And most of my abilities were on the Storm side. I picked some of the passes from the Earth side to boost spell damage, but there really wasn't, after I got the really core things I needed, which again was around level 30, there was nothing in that passive tree that I saw that would significantly change my gameplay, or also significantly like give me another boost to damage. And while I could have easily picked up more passives or maybe done another skill on the Earth side of it, nothing fundamentally would have changed besides adding another skill altogether, and then I would have to spec into that to make it work. And it just didn't seem worth it to me. I didn't see any massive leap forward that would change how I played. It was a very moderate slope progression, very linear slope that would have gone up if I would have continued, which when I've talked about, PoE 2 and my issues there, I don't like a linear progression. I've been spoiled by Diablo and even PoE 1, where certain items and skills can lead to very strong spikes in your build, and I really enjoy that. I like to feel big difference when I, spec into something or have a new item. I am begrudgingly playing Torchlight Infinite right now, which we will get into later. And Lord Christ, do I have some opinions on that. But at least when you spec in or you get a new item, you feel the jump in power. Even like not even that great of an item. Like you get like a better sword over your sword that has like 5% more DPS, you feel it, which is good. This game, no, you do not feel it. So, and also the last kind of thing, and this is really tied into progression that I had a big issue with, and they might fix this. I highly doubt they will, but they might. And that's loot, and the loot really sucked. I already discussed how white and blues are basically useless. There's yellows and then the greens, which are like slightly above yellows, but below uniques, which honestly are just better items with better stats that are specific. So they have specific roles. But the issue with the uniques is they don't have any flavor text. They don't have any really good unique abilities. At least most of them. Like I would say over half of them don't have any unique ability. They're just really good rolled items, which like cool. Again, I think it's a Diablo 2 thing. Shows my inexperience in Diablo 2. I did play it. I've played the campaign like twice. Okay, it's just not for me. But let me describe one of the items that I went and researched for, because again, I only had a few, and the ones I ran across I were not impressed by. So I found this online is Catharsis. When you have Overshield, generating more spends it on an explosion, dealing lightning damage in a 3-meter area around you. Okay, cool. So you get more energy shield and then boom, lightning. I could see something cool where you get, a bunch of regen, you're just popping off like you're, that'd be interesting. Might try that. Probably not, because all my skills and abilities are all the same. Though a lightning build in this game would probably be pretty solid. Another item I saw, activating barrier, inflicts pierce damage to enemies around you. Okay, cool. But like, do you want to be casting barrier all the time? That's your defensive skill. Like, to do a weird thorns thing? I doubt that. So yeah, again, if I was to build a build and redo this, it would only be with Catharsis, because like, that would be interesting and fun. Everything else is more like this, where again, consuming overwhelm creates an explosion, dealing spirit damage in a 6-meter area around you. Like there's a common trope to these uniques where you're just exploding out different things. And I don't know how much it scales. And if I had to guess, probably not that much. And if that's all the uniques you have is just creating explosions around you, that's not really the best kind of gameplay, in my opinion. It's like the developers didn't want to change how any of the abilities worked when using uniques, and they're just like, fuck it, we'll just make explosions, because that's easy. Easy animation, you don't have to change anything. And honestly, I think it's kind of lame. And if I, again, I don't think the scaling for that would be very good. My other huge issue is the combat just gets so repetitive. I can be distracted by items or quests for quite some time. I have very much ADHD brain, and if you have things for me to do, I will go do them and ignore the combat. Shit, I'm enjoying, to a degree, Torchlight right now, which is just the blasting through the story, which is really quick. But again, I enjoyed it because the gameplay was pretty damn solid, and I kept progressing my character, so it felt really good to get stronger. But when you kind of get to a point in your build where you have nothing further to do, you have no uniques you can go farm or, things to really do besides just do the things that are there, the distractions are less and less. And because of that, you really notice like, oh, I'm just pressing the same buttons in the same order and blasting the screen again. Oh, this kind of sucks. There's nothing more to this build than this. Well, why am I still playing? What's my plateau? And then again, with no endgame mechanics, like, what's the point? Like, you're not going to keep scaling up to a degree into defeating harder and harder enemies. I guess you could do another playthrough, but for me, that's not it. Last bit of this, and then I'll wrap it up. But a big part of why I'm starting this series is I feel like there was so much hype around this game when it hit alpha, which I kind of understand after finishing chapter 1. I was very much enjoying it because there's still, the chase that was still there. But after chapter 2, that chase was kind of done, and into chapter 3, like, my interest waned extremely fast. Maybe the hype was because of the lack of what was there. I wasn't playing it at the time, so I don't know if you could see all the skill trees and everything, so maybe people just didn't know and thought there was going to be so much more. But like, lordy Christ, if people saw those skill trees and the lack of what you could do towards the end, and also I'm sure the uniques in there on release were probably pretty limited, but like, if you couldn't put 2 and 2 together when you're playing chapter 1, like, I think there's kind of an issue that you have, not with the game. The game is what it is, right? And somebody who is more experienced than a casual player should be able to see like, oh, this is my ceiling. And I don't remember anybody talking about that when this released. Everybody was talking about the hype of the game and being excited. So I worry that streamers were just building that hype so they could somehow build an audience, but I guess I'm turning into tinfoil hat here. But anyways, I don't think I could strongly recommend the game. But this is, again, me and my personal opinion. But let's kind of wrap this up. If you like Diablo 2, like, that's your shit, and you want another Diablo 2 to play, here you go, bud. I would still say wait, because the point of playing Diablo 2 is kind of blasting through the whole campaign. And while you could do a couple characters and go through this, I don't think it's quite worth it where it's at. If you love the original, I would say this is very similar to the original. I think it's worth it. I would say you might want to buy now just to have the cheaper price and then wait for early access to actually jumping into it. That would be my recommendation. Also, if you're running AMD and you're just like, hey, I just want to get this because I just love Diablo 2. This is my shit. Wait also. AMD players, like, they say they're working on it, but I don't know what the state of that is. Maybe look into it, do some research. If you're anything like me, you play PoE 1, you play PoE 2, you play Diablo 4, you play Last Epoch, and you like those games for what they are, you will probably not like this. I mean, unless you're just an old head, like you 40 plus, and this is your shit, cool, you might like this, but it's so slow, there's so much dead space in the game, it's very repetitive, and honestly, the loot's not that great. So for me, I would skip it. And I actually kind of regret playing it. That's all I got. Robot out.